Hi everyone, hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Revenue Lounge. Our guest today is Mahesh Kumar. He's a Senior Director of Revenue Operations at AppUX. So Mahesh is counted amongst the top 25 RevOps leaders of 2022. He has 11 years of experience in high growth, dynamic sales and marketing environments. Mahesh, we're delighted to have you today on the Revenue Lounge. And thanks for spending time with us today. Very excited with the conversation.
Thank you, Abhijeet. It was definitely a pleasure meeting you, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, looking forward to learning more from your experience. So let's jump straight into our conversation. Our audience are quite excited with what you have to share today. So my first question is just about your introduction. If you can tell a little bit about your current role at AppUX, let's get started with that.
Sure, Abhijeet. So in my current role, my team and I spend predominantly the idea is to provide strategic value by aligning and optimizing the revenue go-to-market functions, right? So it's sales, marketing, and customer success. The ultimate goal is to make sure we improve the lead to revenue and retention funnel. And personally, I spend a lot of time on uncovering insights from the data points we collect throughout the revenue funnel and feed those back to the corporate strategy and business goals.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I mean, you are basically the unsung hero there, who's helping the GTM engine drive those dollars. So very excited to hear how the data part plays out. So before we move on to the nitty-gritties of what you do here, it'd be good to get your understanding of revenue operations, because there's one question that I ask everyone, because there's so many different versions of revenue operations that goes around. So would be interesting to hear your perspective on what do you define as RevOps?
Yeah, that's definitely a very common and interesting question. The way how I look at revenue operations is to kind of remove the art part of the revenue engine and bring science to it. So it's like make the revenue engine a science-oriented engine, right? Like remove the gut feel, hunches, and the art part of it. So that's the ultimate goal. That's how I define revenue operations. And for that to happen, yeah, definitely we need to get the process aspect, technology aspect, and the data aspect accurate and put it together. But the key is to uncover the hidden insights, right? Like when we put all these pieces together, there are lots of signals and insights. The key is to uncover these insights and feed it back. That's when RevOps becomes a game changer and drives growth.
Yeah, I think you're right. So moving from tactical to strategic, right? I think a lot of RevOps people have become very good hands-on operators, dealing with a lot of like data issues, reporting requirements, system implementations, training, onboarding as well in some cases. But I think what you are probably emphasizing is evolution of RevOps into a strategic profit center for the organization, not just being a cost center, a revenue driver of sorts, where you're digging into data which is hidden, it's buried in silos, it's like scattered across different functions and tools and systems, and using that to drive valuable insights to drive the business. So very interesting. So give us some examples of some of these insights that you'd probably uncover on a day-to-day basis, on a quarterly basis. Just will help us, our audience, visualize and appreciate the impact of analyzing this data.
Absolutely. So in the entire revenue supply chain, right? Like we have a lot of touch points, like handoffs and like handoffs from marketing to sales to customer success, and of course, like from onboarding, implementation, and things like that. So in all these handoffs and touch points, we track, measure, and collect a lot of data points. And there are multiple ways to slice and dice these. We primarily look at, like I personally, if you ask me, like on a quarterly basis, we track like all those data points and see like how are we trending, right? Is there any change that we have to do? it's a constant exercise. It's an ongoing exercise where it's not like we come up with a plan and the plan is like solid for a year or so. We keep on like revisiting the plan on a quarterly basis to understand are the metrics in line with our expectations and the goals. Classic examples can be like what is the customer acquisition cost, right? And are we spending more? Are we spending less? Are we hiring the sales personnel in the right territories? When is the right time to divide a territory into two? These are some strategic decisions, right? Where all these data points help us. Other than the standard, how is my sales cycle doing? How can I improve my sales cycle? Where are my sales reps stuck? What is kind of bottleneck in the entire sales process? And all the other aspects, right? In terms of lead, which source is performing? Where is the best ROI I'm getting? So these are all constant metrics that we measure. Specifically, most of this we measure on a quarterly basis and try to see if they are in line with our expectations and make changes accordingly.
Awesome. No, this is very valuable, and I think the interesting part here is that you're talking about RevOps operating across the revenue funnel, right? From lead to cash. So there's so much of value addition that can be done across these different stages. That brings me to this point around who should revenue operations report into, because you're actually having a full funnel view, which typically a CRO or a CEO or a COO would have, right? And the RevOps is in a unique position to have that full funnel view. So where do you think RevOps should sit as a function?
Yeah, this is another definitely interesting question and a lot of debate around this topic. I still feel RevOps should be part of the revenue organization and it should report into Chief Revenue Officer. Definitely there will be a very close interaction with the finance side of it because it involves spend, cost and all those details. And there should also be a direct cadence with the CEO. But when it comes to tactically where it should sit, I strongly feel it should be part of the Chief Revenue Officer's function. Because that's where they kind of, because as you know, as you said, we have to talk to sales, marketing, customer success, if there's a channel involved, we have to talk to channel sales, the entire 9 yards of the revenue. So it would be ideal for the RevOps to sit under the CRO's organization.
Yeah. No, I think very, very relevant point there. I personally feel as well, I think CRO org is the right place to host RevOps. But I have seen interesting structures in different organizations. So I do ask this question as well when I speak to my guests. The next question, which I am very much looking forward to, is learning about your story, Mahesh. What's your story of getting into revenue operations? And I understand you've been in the space for a long time before the space was called revenue operations. I think everybody knows sales operations, which has been there for quite a few years. But yeah, revenue operations is relatively new. So you can just walk us through your initial journey and how you reached where you are. That would be very interesting for the audience.
Sure. So I started, I spent a lot of time on the revenue side of it, almost my entire career till date. So I started with a pre-sales or a solution engineer kind of role where working closely with the sales and also talking to the technical aspect, showing the product to the customers and things like that. And from there I moved into sales. I built a BDR, SDR team and started building some small sales organization. That was for a couple of years. Then I again moved to marketing. I kind of built and lead a marketing team for 3+ years. So I had an opportunity to get a unique vantage point where I see what it is to be in the as a sales guy and what it is to be a marketing person, right? That way I understood that, okay, there's a lot of gaps, there's a lot of misalignment that needs to be taken care of. So I moved back from marketing into the sales operations role, and that's when a lot of process enhancements, improvements, bringing the right tech stack, and all those exercises I was kind of doing. And by the time the industry came up with the revenue operations term, and I was already in the RevOps during the time doing all the sales planning, revenue modeling, quotas, commissions, and the entire 9 yards of revenue operations.
Yeah, very interesting. My next question is that what's been your biggest data-related nightmare uh, when you executed RevOps strategy?
Yeah, so I was running marketing for a few years, and I thought I have a good hang around the data. I know what is happening in the organization, but later I realized that there are multiple versions of the same data, right? I saw that, like, I mean, every department had their own version of data. In fact, the definition of some of the terms in itself varies from department to department in terms of understanding. So that was a biggest challenge, right? Where, like, you need to make sure everyone has the same understanding what they're talking about, bringing everyone on the same page, and to kind of get it off different set of data points around the same topic. So that was like kind of working with different individuals, making sure like the system of record is same for everyone, and we are all talking the same language, same definitions, same nomenclature. So that was the initial challenge, and because it was too hard to make any decisions, drive any decisions with all this siloed data. So that's where I really felt there's a huge need to bring all these pieces together, and that was a huge challenge in the initial days. So it all started for me. It all started with the data part of it more than the technology and process, because of course, if the process is broken, you're not going to get the right data. If the technology is not integrated, if again it is broken, like there are going to be challenges around the data. So it all started for me from the data, and that's when I thought, okay, this is a huge challenge, and it's a big nightmare to be addressed.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you went about executing that challenge? Like, I mean, you kept talking about siloed data, scattered system. So how did you go ahead and like solve this problem?
Yep. So it was definitely challenging, but the one common aspect is every leader had a same ultimate goal, right? Like everyone wanted to, like, hit the growth numbers. Actually, everyone wanted to achieve the numbers. So that was a common thread connecting every other function. So I took like the top down approach, actually, right? And I took that as a key aspect. I had I started talking to the individual leaders, convinced them in terms of like how can they do things better, provided if they are making the right decisions, right? Like how can we test hypothesis if we have the right data points? And so it's like aligning on the purpose and like the outcomes that we want, actually. And of course, like then you set expectations. The goal is to bring like full transparency, because definitely, like, the lack of transparency in the data costs a lot of revenue growth to the business, right? So once everyone understood this, then it was quite easy. Of course, the tactical portion was there, like you have to do like a lot of work in terms of getting this together. But from the like leadership buy-in, then once the leadership like bought into this, then it becomes definitely much easy. Actually, you kind of have like necessary data experts, data analysts in the team, make sure like you are taking the right decisions in terms of building the framework. And once that is done, the initial results and outcomes come in, and that's it. Like, everyone starts loving it.
Got it. And how do you convince an executive on this data strategy? I think this one view of data or breaking the silos, because I understand that every department has like a department leader, right? Whether it's a VP sales, VP marketing, VP customer success, they could be VP of inside sales or demand generation. So they're all like having their own goals and priorities, and they have a different team. They have their own tech stack. Sometimes they might even have their own ops person, right? They might have their own internal markups or sales ops. So how do you basically go ahead and like get an alignment there at a strategic level? What would you recommend to some of the other RevOps folks out there who are listening to this podcast on how they can go and get an executive buy-in? If you can just probably shed some light basis your experience.
Sure. So the way how I went ahead with this is identifying like some of the use cases, right? when I say some of the use cases, I'll give an example in a couple of minutes. But before that, the the idea is like once, like I mean, as you mentioned, like there will be VP of sales, VP of inside sales probably, and marketing. So everyone thought like, okay, my function is doing good, and like I mean, we are out there, like I mean, things are like I mean are all good. But when ultimately when we put everything together, like if we don't still meet the goals or meet the numbers, then that becomes like, okay, I mean, where is the real problem, right? Like then kind of that's when like I sit with the executives and say like, hey, you know what, if this is good, then why are we not able to meet the goals? So something is missing in the entire puzzle, right? And a classic example which definitely I want to quote as an example is we had we had a very solid handoff process after sales is done to the customer success, and we thought it's all fantastic and everything is good. But we realized that the onboarding used to take quite a few quite a few weeks, and it can be done much better. So one of the simple enhancement that we brought into the process, of course this was backed by a lot of data points, is like why don't we involve the onboarding and customer success team before we close a deal or before we close the sales? So that way, like they are very well aware of like what are the customer expectations, like what we have dealt with them before, and what is their success, and how can we show them value as soon as possible, how can we reduce the time to first value. So what we did was like we in the strategic deals, we made sure the customer success and the onboarding team were involved well in the sales cycle itself, towards the later stages of the sales cycle. And so once we closed the transaction, it was like very easy, and the customer didn't felt any transition gaps or whatever, right? Like it was very seamless from the customer's experience point of view. And we were also able to do the necessary homework in the back end and made sure like I mean we like tend to deliver the time to first value as soon as possible. So this was one classic example where I sat with the customer success executives, also with the sales executives, and we had a understanding where like, okay, we bring the customer success much earlier in the sales cycle, like so that way it's not like once we close a deal we bring the customer success into picture. So like this we had like, so pick and use cases. My advice would be there will be a strong such use case depending upon the maturity of the organization, and pick those use cases and turn around those use cases. That will be the real success.
Got it. Yeah, I think it's a great advice. So picking a relevant use case and connecting the benefit and value to your executive would definitely draw in attention and possibly a sponsorship to carry out an initiative like this. But I do agree with you, Mahesh, that regardless of the way this is achieved, I think doing it is important. I think getting this whole single view is very important for RevOps to add strategic value and even organization to benefit from different types of revenue and data leaks that happen across the organization. So this is great. I had a next question for you, which is basically to understand the benefits that you have seen, like after going through this orchestration process. What are the top benefits that you have seen?
Right. So one of the main benefit is like once we have the data orchestrated, once we have the very good hands on the data, we can test a lot of hypotheses, right? Like whether is this working or that working. So that is something I personally admire a lot, because it helps us to take right decisions. So we test a lot of hypotheses. That is one of the biggest benefit in my point of view, because without having these data points orchestrated, I really don't think we can truly test the hypothesis, right? Like there can still be scope of errors and things like that. And of course, like you tend to have a single source of truth in a way, and with all these latest and like the compliance requirements, you always tend to stay within compliance with all the privacy laws and stuff like that. And of course, like you get more visibility into the health of the business, what is working, what is not working, and you drive decisions based on like all these data points and not based on gut feel, right? Like these are the primary benefits I would see: the visibility, the compliance aspect, testing the hypothesis, making right decisions, and remove any bias, right? From all these things, like there's no bias. It's all like purely data driven, fact oriented, and there's no bias in terms of the decisions.
Got it. And at a root level, how did you initiate capture of the data or data flows in general, right? Because if you look at the entire revenue funnel, there is a lot of data that gets generated by different types of users, right? And they all use different tools, different communication systems. Sometimes they don't even use tools which are used by the organization. They might use their own tools as well. So, I mean, the data is like all over the place, right? And then there is data which gets generated by flows and exchanges between different systems which interact with each other. So there is the human generated data, there is system to human data, and then there is system to system data. And then there's internal data and external data, right? I mean, within your internal revenue team, then with your buying team, buying committee that your revenue team interacts with. So, I mean, there's so much of digital data workload today, which was not there like 3-4 years back. So, how did you go ahead, connecting and capturing all of this and bringing it into your core system of record?
Yeah, so it is definitely a huge challenge, and as you mentioned, every other team, for every other specific purpose or need, we tend to use different point solutions, right? It's not like one solution is going to there are like so many different tools and technologies and solutions out there, and each solves a specific use case, right? So I strongly feel like, yeah, the point solutions will continue to exist, and teams will definitely use those to make sure they solve their problem statements, specific problem statements. The idea is that's where I want to use the word orchestrate and not to use the word consolidate, because there is no way we can consolidate things actually in today's era. And as you rightly mentioned, there is like user generated data, system generated data, internal, external, and there's the best way is to orchestrate all these things. So get to know when to use what data, and make sure you have the right tools to kind of pull those data aspects. But for that to happen, the data needs to be in a very structured way. It's definitely the lot of hard work needs to go behind the scenes in terms of categorizing the data, what is important, what is not important, and structuring the data so that way every data is kind of structured in the same format, same pattern, right? And then kind of making sure that all those data is available for whenever we need for different set of analysis. So yeah, it's about looking at the bigger picture and making sure okay, first of all, I think it's all about categorizing, structuring, and making sure it's available for any sort of analysis. Then you can of course feed into any sort of visualization tools, whatever Tableau or Power BI, whatever tool it is actually, and try to consume it in the format that we want.
Got it. Are there any specific tools that you use to bring the data in? I mean, I understand you gave example about visualization where there are tools like Tableau and other BI systems which can be used. But and I think most of the organizations have Salesforce as a core CRM, or sometimes HubSpot or Microsoft Dynamics. But with regards to connecting this data, what are the tools that you have used which have been helpful for you to orchestrate this data better?
Yeah, so we also use Salesforce for CRM, and we have quite a quite a big tech stack overall. So the first goal is to try to do native integration, right? Rather than bringing any other tool. So wherever possible, we try to make sure the integration is native integration, and there is a seamless connection between the two systems, and the data is being captured in the format that we would like to have. But sometimes it is definitely we have to compromise in some of the aspects. So that's where we today we just we don't have any a classic ETL system or a tool. But what we do is we do have internal internal tool where it's more like a lot of scripts that we have used. Some of this we even use our own product to do some sort of workflows to move data from one aspect to another aspect. So we don't have any out of the box solution from the market to orchestrate. It is done using a bunch of scripts and automation scripts internally.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of midnight oil was burnt to make that happen, and a lot of heavy lifting of moving mountains there, data mountains of sorts, to get all of that in. But I believe once I think it's done, you have you're sitting on a gold mine, right? I mean, you have that like unique visibility which can generate those powerful, timely insights to drive business actions. Yeah, no, that's great. Wonderful to hear how you've accomplished that uphill task. Um, now I want to touch upon the mindset shift, right? I mean, I think one is the execution aspect of it, but I believe a lot of it has to also do with mindset, right? I think most of the high growth companies are like busy with like driving sales at any cost, growth at any cost, and what you described is a very patient game of like getting the data sets connected together, getting like tech stack talk to each other, getting them talk to the CRM, getting CRM talk to like the visualization tools. So all of this is like a lot of great patience, and it takes time to make it like reliable and accurate, right? Whereas on the sales or GTM side, it's more about like, okay, let's sign the next customer, let's find the next 10 customers, let's find the next 100 customers, right? So that works at a very different momentum. So what do you reckon of the mindset shift that's required by a high growth organization to like invest into this data orchestration program?
Yeah, definitely there should be a it's a mindset, as you mentioned. It's just a shift in the mindset, right? Bringing the data culture, I would say, that is the key mindset shift that we want to have, because it is easy to go ahead and kind of, okay, I have an acute problem now, right? And I just need to pick a right technology to solve this problem, right? It's kind of painful today, and I just need a solution or a technology to solve this problem. It is easy to go with that approach, but the fact is, like, whether this solution, that whatever we are choosing, right, like how is this going to overlay with the current data tech stack or like the data infrastructure. And same goes not only with technology, even the internal processes, right? It is easy to make tweaks, changes in the processes, but what is the impact of those changes to the current data infrastructure, right? Like for instance, is my historical data still can I still use the same historical data to run the analysis because of some process changes? It can be as simple as changing a sales stage in a CRM, right? Or it can be any small change. But I think looking each and every problem or every change that we make from the data mindset from the is the key, actually, and that is the mindset shift that we want. So I would call like the culture of it's a data culture, right? And the reason why this will be very critical is like this is what is going to help drive the momentum. Yeah, it's very important to drive, like, I mean, what are my next 10 deals, right? Like, how can I do more, actually, how can I hit my numbers? But for those to happen, we definitely need the right data so that we can take the right decisions. So having the data culture, that's the mindset shift that we definitely want.
Yep, yeah, rightfully so. I think mindset is very important to make things happen on ground, right? I mean, if you don't have the mindset and you don't shift it in line with what you want to execute, you will see very different results. So you bang on with your in the suggestion there. I wanted to touch upon the next aspect, is again linked to like hyper growth, which is about scalability, right? I mean, once somebody invests in this data program from an orchestration standpoint, creating a single source of truth. Largely, it's like CRM, but yeah, I think there's CRM plus plus where you get all of these things together. But how do you like solidify it as the organization scales, right? And a lot of time that scale happens very fast, right? So what would be your recommendation and thoughts around scalability?
Yeah, that's a very great question, because it's a very common problem or for the startups, right? Because they grow fast, and once they grow to a particular stage, suddenly everything becomes irrelevant, and you have to do everything from scratch. So things become like, I mean, like, because the problem statement changes, the entire dynamics changes, right? So I think, like, when we build, definitely, and a lot of RevOps people come back and say, like, hey, you know what? If I would have got a chance, I would have done it in a different way, right? Looking back from the hindsight. So the key is, whatever we do, will this stay relevant after a couple of years? Once, like, the company moves to a next level of growth, right? Like, will this stay relevant? If not, like, let's not implement it now, right? Like, let's make sure, like, whatever we do is kind of built to scale, right? Like, that's what I say, like, the goal is to kind of build things to scale. It's not just like to solve a problem today. No quick fix, no patches. It's all about making sure we get the scalability portion of it addressed. So yeah, the thing is, like, it's just a thought process again, like, will this stay relevant after, like, say X number of years, or after the organization hits this particular number, will this still stay relevant? If so, then go ahead. If not, like, we have to rethink.
Yeah, it's a very tough thing to do actually, because even on the product development side, right? I mean, you have to continuously look at scaling your architecture. I mean, it's a similar problem that how do you like handle the user volume that's going to hit you, transaction volume that's going to hit you, and you design probably an architecture keeping 12, 18, 24 months or 36 months, and then sometimes you get that like scale even sooner, which is a great news for the business, but then it's a nightmare for the engineering team. I believe the same problem occurs here in revenue operations as well, when you're like tying together all the systems, data, process, tech stack, and they all start scaling, right? If the business is growing, um, I think it becomes a similar problem. So it's interesting to drive the right balance of getting something done quickly because the business needs it, at the same time making sure that it's scalable, and it's scalable for like a certain period, right? So that you don't have to keep doing this every 6 months.
That's right. Or we should try to have a path of moving from place A to place B as we kind of grow. So if we have the at least a high level path kind of like defined or understood, then I think it's okay. But yeah, so I mean, again, like, it's just like making sure we think about that, like, okay, what's, like, if suddenly there's a huge disruption, right? Like, how I'm going to change my architecture, how am I going to change my tech stack, like, what will be the impact? So, but yeah, if there's an exit path, and making sure, like, it's about, like, is my processes and tech stack resilient, how resilient it is actually.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. My next question for you is around matrix, right? So what are some of the key metrics to track that you would recommend for any RevOps person to make sure that there is an alignment in terms of data, and there's an alignment in terms of taking these right decisions. So what are some of the common metrics that you would personally track, and you'll recommend other RevOps people to track?
Sure. Uh, so I look at metrics from three different perspectives. One are like the top business metrics. These are like the customer acquisition cost. What is the, like, how much cost of customer retention, lifetime value of the customer. So these are like the typical key business metrics that help in kind of long-term planning and strategic decisions. Then you go a level down and track metrics like the sales cycle time, the average, like, deal size, ACV, and again, like, slice and dice by different products, categories, different geos, in whatever, like, different attributes, whatever attributes that are applicable. Because these are the metrics that will help us to, again, like, these can be strong inputs to the product management, for pricing, for the sales, the sales leaders, in terms of, like, how can they change any processes, or like where the sales team is kind of like struggling, what type of enablement we need actually, and things like that. And of course, the third level metrics is more focused in terms of the campaign metrics, right? Like, which campaign is working, where I'm spending money actually, like, what is working, what is not working. It is further drilling down, like, coming to the going. So it's all from macro to the micro. So it's like the top business metrics that we have to track, relevant, like, I mean, that is extremely relevant for the business from the long-term strategic point of view, and the day-to-day metrics, right? Like the A/B testing that we do for different campaigns, and the yeah, the web analytics, like, I mean, what type of traffic I'm getting, like, I mean, what is working, what is not working, all the way from, like, a simple like ad impressions and things like that. So from macro to micro, you have to look from all the aspects.
Yeah. Interesting. No, there are some of very important metrics to track for anybody out there. So thanks for laying it out for some of us who are getting onto that journey. My last question in this segment is a bit interesting. It's more around the future, right? And we talked about the past, we talked about the present, like the key challenges and how to overcome data orchestration. If you have to look at future from a revenue operations standpoint broadly, where do you see the function is headed? Let's say 5 years down the line, what do you see the future like?
Yeah, so as we kind of started with this, right? It's definitely I think the future of RevOps is the shift will be more from tactical to strategic. That's the key. In fact, I think RevOps will be a key differentiator of successful teams, and the scope of RevOps will expand. I can see like I mean I already started seeing some organizations where like customer experience is part of RevOps actually. I mean it's definitely surprising and shocking or whatever, but already like the scope of RevOps is expanding, and yeah, the I think the future is like as I said, like it's definitely like the scope will be more, it will be strategic, and there will be direct responsibility for growth. RevOps will have a direct responsibility for growth, and they will kind of impact the revenue strategy, and because of all these data decisions that the insights that they drive, they will impact the revenue strategy and own the responsibility for the growth.
Awesome. Very excited with that future that you described. Looking forward to the next 5 years. But I do agree with you. The way the function of revenue operations has evolved in the last 5 years, it's just the beginning. We're just at the tip of the iceberg. There's so much of value it can deliver. It's a business critical function, and we just started acknowledging the benefits there. So there's a lot to be achieved, and yeah, very exciting future ahead. I highly recommend that as a great career path for anybody who is like getting started in their career. I think revenue operations is an exciting new area of work people can start their career in. So this brings us to the end of the first segment. Our second segment is about rapid fire questions. Very quick, simple questions just to know you a little better before we end today's episode. So the question number one that I have for you is like, tell us about a book that you recently read and you loved it.
Yep. The most recent one would be Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick David. That's a real nice book. He talks about like business strategy, and it's a very good book. Your Next 5 Moves.
Yeah. Which was your favorite move out of the five?
Of course, like he talks about strategy a lot. Actually, the entire book is about strategy. So yeah, so that's you know.
All right. So it's strategic move right there. Question number two. What's your favorite part of working in RevOps?
Problem solving, making making decisions that like I mean coming up with decisions and making those decisions that solve the problems, and you also get to see the results or outcomes, right? Like whether either you can be right or wrong, doesn't matter, but you kind of like got an opportunity to solve the problem, attend to the problem.
Yeah, very interesting. And what's the least favorite part about working in revenue operations?
Okay. This is like you get swamped with like ad hoc requests on day-to-day basis, right? Some can be very tactical, so it's like you cannot sometimes you cannot plan the day because you start a day with a different plan, but when you look back, like, oh, you know what? Like I just got swamped with all these ad hoc requests.
Yeah, indeed. Next question. Who is one RevOps peer or leader you personally look up to and why?
Yeah, he's not a RevOps leader, but he's like I used to work with Ryan Windham. He used to be a CEO in the past, and he's a fantastic leader. I admire him and love working with him.
Yeah, and why is that? What particular aspect of his uh, skill or experience that you really appreciate?
Uh, Again, like I'm little data analytical person, right? Like so when somebody is also talking the similar language, you tend to kind of like find the synergy and find the bond there. So like even small decisions that we take, he used to kind of like look at the data aspect of it, where the data scientist aspect had, and so that's why I kind of like definitely look up to him.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. The second last question for you is around An advice that you received from someone that has stayed with you.
Attention to detail.
Attention to detail. Yeah, I second that highly. I made a lot of blunders myself by not not being detail oriented in past. So I definitely completely agree with that advice. Definitely, and especially in a RevOps function, it's super important, right, to have the detail orientation. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Mahesh. And the last question for you is a piece of advice you like to give to our audience, especially for the ones who are starting their career in RevOps. What would be your advice to them?
My advice would be build to scale. Do not take any hasty decisions or like a very short-term fix is not a way to go. So build to scale is my advice. No short-term fixes.
No short-term fixes and build to scale. Yeah, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you, Mahesh, for your time today and sharing all of these insights and wealth of information and golden nuggets. I really liked the conversation, and I'm sure our audience are going to appreciate the conversation we had today. Thank you again.
Thank you, Abhijeet. It was great interacting with you, and thanks again. Have a great day.